Welcome to IFS versus solid axle. So here I have a Land Cruiser 70 series, which is our solid axle prop. And here we have a Ford Ranger, which is the IFS prop. But before we get into all the details and all the pros and cons, all the stuff that you want to know before you head out and buy something, let's first understand the main difference. Land Cruiser first. This is just a prop. There are many solid axle vehicles out there. Okay, what we have here is what's known as a solid front axle, also known as a live axle, solid front, and a beam axle. I don't know, too many people call it a beam axle, so let's just refer to it as a solid or a live axle. What this means is wheel attached at each end. When this side dips down because of articulation, the other side will go up. The whole beam moves like this. It's fixed. That's how it works. It's solid. The CVs on this vehicle, on either side where the wheels are, it allows for this kind of movement. It doesn't allow for that movement because that's in the axle. That's the main difference. There are different components. As you can see, it looks pretty crude and it looks pretty strong. Independent front suspension, IFS, also known as IRS if you have it on the rear. This is the Ford Ranger. This is what's known as IFS, also known as wishbone suspension. How did I get the term wishbone? By the lower control arm and the upper control arm. They kind of look like a wishbone. So here we have the axle coming out and there's the CV. Now the CV has two ends to it. This allows for that movement and a little bit of this movement because everything in here kind of moves around. When you drive over things, as you can see here, one side will move up independently or down to the other side. So in this case, this is hitting a log or a stump that's going up. This side remains down, working independently from each other. So there's a rock on this side, drive over the rock, come back down, this side stays down. It doesn't move like the live axle. As I've already explained, IFS vehicle, there is also IRS, not to be confused here. So IFS, independent front suspension, IRS, independent rear suspension. Which vehicles have that? Well, I'll name two really quick. You have the Pajero, and you have the Y62 Patrol. Both of those have independent front and rear suspension. So what I'm talking about here can refer to independent rear as well. Handling, that's the first thing we'll cover. Old technology, this is new technology. Live axle, in comparison to an IFS vehicle, some people will say they handle like a boat, which is pretty true. IFS handles way better, way better. Moving on from handling, we have comfort. IFS, way more comfortable than a solid axle vehicle. Like I said, they handle like a boat in comparison to an IFS vehicle, and IFS vehicle are way more comfortable. When you actually hit a rock or something on a gravel road, one side will absorb it, the other side won't ever move. In a solid axle vehicle, the whole thing will move. There'll be some kind of movement, and even worse, if they are leaf sprung, even worse. The same goes for gravel road, highway, and even off-road. Off-road comfort, IFS is still way better. To a degree, when we start talking big lifts and big holes, big washouts, then a solid axle vehicle will have more flex and therefore win the comfort race there because there's less movement in the whole body of the vehicle. Whereas an IFS vehicle, you can only lift it so high, the whole car is going to be moving because it's lifting wheels. But all in all, IFS, way more comfortable. Clearance off-road, underbody clearance. An IFS vehicle is actually better because a live axle vehicle or a solid front, the diff pumpkin hangs down pretty low. You got the control arms, all that stuff there. Whereas an IFS, everything's tucked up. The differential is up in the body, and there's movement on the CV axles which allows the wishbones to be down, and there's nothing in the middle. So there's more clearance on an IFS vehicle than there is on a solid axle vehicle. If you want more clearance on a solid axle vehicle, the only way you're going to beat an IFS is by putting portal axles in on the end of your axle, which will lift the whole axle off the ground even higher, yet keep the wheels down. Wheel alignments. You can get a better wheel alignment on an IFS vehicle than a live axle vehicle. And that's because you have all the different adjustments. You've got caster and camber, it's all adjustable. However, you can knock your wheel alignment out easier on an IFS vehicle than on a solid axle vehicle. Which is stronger? I'm not an engineer, so let me just start by saying that. But what I will say is the solid axle, live axle, is stronger than an IFS. And here's my reasoning why. Independent front suspension vehicles, there's a lot of components. They're all little thin bits and pieces, all working together to create this super comfortable ride. Should you have a decent impact on the front, something is sure to snap. If you give it too much of a hard time, something is sure to snap because there's so much small thin bits and pieces in there. Lower control arm, upper control arm, the CV, the struts, and everything else that's in there. There's a lot of stuff in there. Solid axle, live axle vehicle, it's way stronger built. It's all bigger metal parts. That's my argument for this being stronger than that. Another thing to take into account, if you have a decent impact, you'll probably destroy the solid axle, the live axle. However, your chassis is more than likely going to stay intact. IFS, on the other hand, everything there is attached to the chassis directly. So if you do have a decent impact, you're probably going to damage the chassis as well. One other thing to keep in mind, IFS vehicles and solid vehicles, they also design differently. Now, most solid axle vehicles are older vehicles, so the whole frame, the whole chassis is going to be stronger. IFS, like I said, is newer tech. The vehicles are made to crumble. So in an off-road situation, the vehicle itself is weaker on an IFS than it is with a solid axle, in general. Vehicle weight. IFS vehicle, the components are a lot lighter than the solid axle cousin. So if you want a lighter vehicle, better fuel economy, better handling, better comfort, that's your guy there. We just covered which one's lighter. Now we're going to cover which one can carry the most weight. A live axle vehicle is designed to carry weight. It's designed to be robust. It's old tech, but it works. It holds a lot more weight. IFS vehicles, like I've already explained, they're designed for comfort and handling. They are not designed to carry weight. You can make them carry weight, but they're not designed for it. These will be stronger.